If, like me, you are constantly fueled loads of animated shows on VHS or DVD back in the late 90s to early 2000s, then there's a good chance that a few of those shows were owned or distributed by Hit Entertainment. Hit Entertainment, for many people, served as pinnacle nostalgia for people my age or older. However, Hit's story hasn't really been covered at all, bar logo histories, so today I'm going to do them a service by explaining the history of Hit Entertainment. Hit got its starts way back in the 80s. Media entrepreneur Peter Orton met puppeteer Jim Henson at the Children's Television Workshop, who were the producers of Sesame Street, which Henson worked on. They became good friends, and soon they set up Henson International Television to serve as an international distribution arm of Henson's self-named production company. Resultingly, they distributed the likes of The Muppet Show and Fraggle Rock. However, this period of the company is not the one that everyone remembers. In 1989, Henson began discussions with the Walt Disney Company on the possibility of a merger valued at $150 million. Orton found out about this, and possibly seeking an opportunity, and with Henson's permission, led a management buyout of Henson International Television and renamed it to the utterly generic and boring-sounding Hit Communications plc. Its logo became a stately silver with blue lasers hitting the dot on the letter I. It looks like a logo for a telecommunications company dealing in the medium of satellite battles, but it was probably unintentional. By 1990, Hit didn't hold the rights to Henson's catalogue anymore, and began acquiring the likes of Postman Pat, Alvin and the Chipmunks, and Barney and Friends. Ultimately, the Disney-Henson deal went nowhere, and Henson died in the same year of toxic shock syndrome. In 1991, British satellite and cable TV operators Flextech took a 23% share of Hit, mainly to help finance it in case all of it went wrong for whatever reason. A new logo was introduced in 1995, making it more stately, complete with the Earth. Holy crap, do these people not know how to make a logo that feels catered towards children? Again, it was probably unintentional. Entering 1997, we see arguably the more memorable Hit logo, not just for me but for plenty of others who grew up with on VHS. This is a logo that sticks in my head, not the corporate sell-by-date capitalist bar humbuggery that came before, mostly because I wasn't born in the 90s. Confetti and music that sounds vaguely like Disney in a weird sort of way. You know it worked too, as this survived in one form or another until 2008. By now they styled themselves as Hit Entertainment plc, which is arguably more inviting than Communications. There was also another version of the logo on top of a blue angelic background, which doesn't do much, but it sticks out and is very hard for someone like me to hate on a logo that came after Bob the Builder. In early 2000, the company held talks with Britt Allcroft, the woman who brought the brilliant Thomas the Tank Engine to television screens and directed the not-so-brilliant film adaptation. However, these talks were temporary, as they couldn't agree on a price and the merger fell through. But this wouldn't be the last time Hit Entertainment interacted with the Tank Engine. Later, in 2002, 2 years after Allcroft resigned as CEO of a company because of the disaster that was Thomas and the Magic Railroad, Ghislaine Entertainment agreed to be sold to Hit for £139 million, thus slowly ending an era. A year before, Hit also bought the Pygos Group, who produced Pingu, adding another show to Hit's growing portfolio of goodies. A few years later, in 2004, Hit Entertainment announced that they would distribute several shows from the Jim Henson Company for 5 years, which, if anything, is a perfect representation of a boomerang. They always come back. At the same time, Hit was looking into even more partnerships and announced what was quite literally its biggest venture yet. Together with 3 other companies, they would launch a brand new preschool channel in the United States. These companies included NBC Universal, who controlled the likes of the Universal Pictures Film Studio, as well as the NBC television network, PBS, pioneers of children's television in their own right, mostly thanks to their member stations and handing off their daytime hours to such shows, and Sesame Workshop, a non-profit organisation mostly in the field of researching and TV producing, their most popular show being Sesame Street. During this, HIT was facing its own struggles. In 2005, private equity firm Apax Partners purchased the entirety of the company for over £485 million, with Greg Dyke being appointed as chairman. Dyke was formerly the Director General for BBC, and at the time was Chancellor of the University of York, and is often mistaken as that guy who reformatted breakfast television. All that aside, eventually HIT, PBS, Sesame Workshop and NBC Universal managed to launch their channel, rather surprisingly titled PBS Kids Sprout, in September 2005. HIT's home entertainment arm in North America was proving to be too much, and in 2006 they closed it down, signing a new deal with 20th Century Fox to distribute in North America. Starting in 2007, HIT introduced a new logo too, dropping the DMAC-inspired bollocks with something much more childish. Okay, so it's a cube with HIT on each side to form a logo with music that sounds like it's actively mocking me for unknown reasons. Because of its overall feel, and probably because any logo put in front of children's media is treated as such, it's been subject to hundreds and thousands of logo effect videos as seen on YouTube. It's basically either the equivalent of jangling keys in front of the child's face, hypnotising them, or giving them a lobotomy, whichever one is more humane. Starting in 2008, HIT went through a phase of selling a copious amount of IPs such as Guinness World Records and Sooty to its current presenter, Richard Goodell. They also switched their distribution in North America to Lionsgate for some reason. Perhaps this was writing on the wall, but I want to revisit Sprout for a second. Considering HIT's involvement in the channel basically amounted to the rights to various children's properties, including Bob the Builder, Barney and Friends, Teletubbies, Thomas and Friends, Angelina Ballerina, and Rubber Dubbers, most of them British for some reason. Worse was to come, however. In 2009, telecommunications conglomerate Comcast, operators of the largest cable provider in the United States, announced their intent on acquiring NBC Universal from General Electric, which, as far as I can tell, they only really make fridges. The acquisition itself didn't actually happen until 2011, costing in total over $13 billion, which is more money than I'll ever see in my lifetime. By 2011, Apax Partners took the opportunity to take full control of HIT's stake in Sprout, selling HIT off to another multinational conglomerate by the name of Mattel for $680 million. I think the best way to come to terms with how much Mattel cared about HIT was in the fact that they managed it under the Fisher-Price unit. As for Apax, their stake in Sprout was bought out by an increasingly imperialistic Comcast, doing the same with PBS's stake, now fully owning the channel. By 2017, Sprout was renamed Universal Kids, and regularly placed last across the entirety of American television, before eventually being killed off in March 2025, mostly in the name of progression. As for HIT, their sale to Mattel was likely a clue. Thomas and Friends, a series starring talking trains and, more often than not, an excuse to bully the likes of myself, was becoming a financial success. Mattel soon favoured Thomas and Friends to an extent where they were considering selling off HIT's other properties to other companies, but they soon decided against it. But all of this was delaying the inevitable. By 2016, HIT absorbed the company into a newly created division called Mattel Creations, effectively spelling the end of HIT's 34-year operation as an actual company, even if 4 of its years was under a faceless conglomerate. So what do we learn from this? Pretty much nothing, plainly speaking. HIT was created accidentally as a distribution arm for Jim Henson's shows, but ultimately became a company in itself. Unfortunately, the 21st century demands mergers, acquisitions, and other business bibble, and Mattel were ultimately the ones who killed HIT. Under Mattel, Thomas and Friends is now 2D and manufactured from Toronto rather than London, and the 3D series ultimately caved in when Big World, Big Adventures was universally agreed to be a category error, and the future seems just ever so slightly more rubbish. Mattel also owns Hit's other assets like Barney and Angelina Ballerina, but be damned if they do something more than pay tribute to them.